There is a type of persuasion so subtle, so invisible, and so unnervingly effective that most people never realize it's happening to them. It doesn't change their thoughts. It changes their impulses. And once it's activated, people begin agreeing with you automatically, without ever sensing the shift. This technique is called micro-compliance psychology. It's the hidden foundation behind elite negotiators, charismatic leaders, expert persuaders, and even certain forms of social engineering. But here's the truth most people never hear. Micro-compliance doesn't start with big requests. It starts with tiny, almost invisible, yes responses, planted inside someone's nervous system. And once someone says these tiny yeses, the big yes becomes almost impossible to resist. Today, you will learn exactly how to trigger those tiny yeses. You will learn how to influence people without ever sounding pushy or controlling. And once you master this, people will follow your lead willingly, comfortably, even gratefully. Not because you forced them, but because you learned to guide their impulses. Let's begin. Why micro-compliance works. Most persuasion targets the conscious mind. Micro-compliance targets the preconscious mind, the part that reacts before logic forms. Our brains are wired to follow patterns of consistency. If a person gives you 3 tiny yeses, their brain automatically tries to avoid breaking the pattern by giving you a no. This is why elite interrogators, FBI negotiators, and psychological researchers rely on micro-level agreement triggers. But here is the shocking part. You don't have to be an expert to use them. You just need to understand how to create low-resistance agreement moments. And those moments begin not with what you say, but with what you make their brain feel. Trigger 1. The zero defense question trick. The first micro-compliance strategy is something I call the zero defense question. A zero defense question is a question so small, so harmless, and so easy to answer that the other person gives an automatic yes. Here's how it works. Let's say you want someone to agree to help you with a task. Most people ask directly and trigger resistance. Instead, you start with, "Real quick, you free for just a second?" That question triggers automatic compliance because it's small. It's harmless. It requires no long-term commitment. And the brain reflexively agrees. After they say yes, you follow with a second micro question. "Mind if I ask you something super quick?" That's 2 yeses. Then you deliver your actual request. By the time you reach the real ask, their brain is already in agreement mode. It's not magic. It's neurology. Modern example. Customer service agents who get the highest approval ratings use this constantly. Before asking a customer for details, they ask simple questions like, "Can I check something for you?" Customers always say yes. And then they follow along with the entire conversation with surprisingly little resistance. Trigger 2. The micro lean forward technique. People don't just comply through words. They comply through physiology. If you create the right physical cue, the brain mirrors the behavior. This technique works like this. When you begin talking, lean forward less than 1 inch. Not too much. Just enough to signal engagement. The human brain mirrors micro-actions. When you lean forward subtly, they lean forward internally, creating a cooperative mental posture. This sets the stage for compliance. Real-life example. During a difficult breakup conversation, the person who subtly leans forward first almost always directs the emotional tone. The other person's subconscious mirrors it and follows their emotional lead. This is micro-compliance through body influence. Trigger 3. The micro-pause authority cue. The next micro-compliance tool uses silence. But not long silence. Just 1 second silence. When you pause for 1 second before delivering instructions or a statement, the brain interprets the pause as authority. This pause triggers a moment of anticipation. And anticipation increases compliance. Here's how it works. You say, "Here's what we should do," pause 1 second. Then speak normally. That pause activates a tiny spike of psychological tension. The brain resolves that tension by following your lead. Modern example. Successful teachers do this naturally. Before giving instructions, they pause. Students become alert. Then they comply. This works even on adults. Trigger 4. The microdirection priming trick. Microdirection is when you guide a person's attention before guiding their action. For example, look, here's the simplest way to fix this. When you direct someone's attention first, they follow your behavior next. This is because the brain follows attention before it follows decisions. Modern example. Politicians do this constantly. Before giving a solution, they say phrases like, "Pay attention to this. Here's what really matters. Look at the pattern here." These microdirections create a primed mind. A primed mind agrees more easily. Trigger 5. The micro-reward loop. The next strategy is rooted in behavioral psychology. People repeat what feels rewarding. So you must reward micro-compliance instantly. But not with big praise. That ruins the effect. Reward them with a micro-approval. Here are examples. A slight smile. A subtle nod. A soft, perfect. A gentle, yeah, that makes sense. These micro-rewards reinforce small agreements. And reinforce the behavior of saying yes. Modern example. Great leaders acknowledge small contributions quickly. This makes the team more willing to agree to larger tasks. It's not manipulation. It's positive reinforcement. Trigger 6. The micro-friction removal strategy. People resist requests not because they don't want to agree, but because agreeing feels like work. Micro-friction removal removes tiny points of resistance from your request. For example, instead of saying, "Can you help me move this?" say, "Mind giving me just a quick hand with this for 5 seconds?" The phrase, 5 seconds, removes friction. People comply with anything that feels small and easy. Modern example. Apps like TikTok exploded because they removed friction. 0 effort to open. 0 effort to scroll. 0 effort to consume. And millions complied. This exact principle works in human persuasion too. Trigger 7. The micro-ownership shift. People resist requests when they feel like they are losing power. So you flip that dynamic. You make them feel like the request gives them power. You do this using micro-ownership phrases. Examples. Your perspective would help me a lot. You're good at this part. I trust your eye for detail. These micro-ownership cues bypass resistance by making the request feel like a compliment. People comply faster when the request protects their ego. Modern example. Managers who do this have the least employee conflict. Praise first. Request second. Compliance third. Trigger 8. The micro-commitment anchor. Anchoring is usually used with big requests. Micro-anchoring uses tiny commitments. Example. Before asking someone for a favor, you ask them something like, "Real quick, you believe in helping people out when you can, right?" Most people will say yes. Then you ask for the thing. Their brain aligns with the anchored identity. It's incredibly hard to say no after affirming a positive trait. Modern example. Fundraisers do this instinctively. Do you consider yourself someone who cares about the community? People say yes. Then the fundraiser asks for support. And they get it. Trigger 9. The micro-behavior mirror technique. This is one of the most powerful. When someone uses a certain emotional tone, mirror it by 10 to 15%. Not too much. Just enough that the brain believes you are on their wavelength. Mirroring creates instant psychological rapport. Rapport increases compliance. Modern example. Therapists mirror. Salespeople mirror. Confident leaders mirror. And people open up instantly. The moment someone feels matched, they feel safe. The moment they feel safe, they agree. Putting it all together. Now imagine using these techniques in real moments. Someone is angry. You use a micro pause. Their anger weakens. Someone is resistant. You use a micro yes question. Their resistance drops. Someone is stubborn. You shift micro ownership. They soften. Someone is losing interest. You use a micro direction cue. They re-engage. This is how micro-compliance turns everyday conversations into effortless influence. Not manipulation. Just psychology. Just human nature. Just understanding what most people never take the time to learn. If you want to discover other powerful persuasion tricks to get anyone to do anything, click the link in the description below. Then watch this video next to learn the most powerful persuasion trick no one sees coming.